Daniel Jeremiah, NFL draft analyst with NFL Network. Make sure you head on over to NFL Network for all the great coverage that they've got going on and the live coverage that is happening in Kansas City, April 27th to the 29th. Daniel, appreciate you taking the time to hop on with us. I know that things are a little bit busy right now, but it really means a lot that you're hopping on to talk a little bit about the draft.
Shoot, come on, man. It's my pleasure. Good to catch up with you guys, and we're almost there. So it's like, I mean, it just feels like we're waiting for something crazy to happen. Like I feel like it's kind of like the calm before the storm, and so I'm just waiting. Like I'm sure, like as we're talking, the Cardinals will trade like the third pick or something crazy.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's one of my fears is that I'll tape and do a show and then find out that everything we said was irrelevant, but that hasn't happened yet. And it's one of the things that I'm sure that we're going to talk about a little bit today. But before we get to that, though, I had to take advantage of this opportunity. So I don't know if you know this or not, but Matt is a quarterback coach. He founded Sims Complete QB. He does a lot of quarterback breakdowns, a lot of great stuff. And I had a clip of a quarterback that went to App State that I'd love to pull up and just get some thoughts from Matt here.
Oh, no, this is bad.
This is against Wake Forest, it looks like. Matt, what are your thoughts on this?
All right, well, I think the stance underneath center, I mean, the dude is ready to go. He's braced for impact. I love just the will, the fearlessness, the push, the leg drive. You see the lower half working. But what a clip, man. That's awesome, DJ. What a memory, too. And Joe muted the sound there, but it was that place was rocking on that touchdown. Do you remember that play specifically?
Yeah, dude. So we're in overtime with Wake Forest. They had just beat Clemson like the week before, so they were riding high. And we went in there, and we're all like plucky little App State, all of our sawed off linemen that didn't get recruited by any of these ACC schools, and we were like we were kind of beating them up a little bit. And talking to those guys afterwards, I got to know some of them. But we get into overtime, and we actually ran option. Pitch it, and our back scored the play before that, but no replay, so they didn't give it to us, so they put it right on the 1 yard line. So then we just sneak it, and I'm there's like go low, like look at me, I'm not gonna leg drive and get underneath people. Like I'm trying to, that was my attempt of trying to go over the top without jumping, and then just extending the ball. So the cool thing is that ended up going in their facility. They have that picture of me extending the ball, and then Sean Clark, who was my left tackle, is now the head coach at App. So he's standing right next to me. And it was like, dude, we got to live off that game for a couple years, and they go beat Michigan, and it's like Wake Forest. Wake Forest. We beat Michigan.
But hey, it's good to know that you guys were really the first ones to kind of knock off the David and Goliath situation and pass it to the next generation.
You were very kind, by the way, Matt. You could have been cruel there. I appreciate you taking it easy.
Dude, I mean, come on, bro. You're also talking to a failed quarterback here, so I know what it's like, man. Like we can't beat each other down. We gotta appreciate the good things we did, and the lessons we learned.
You see, by the way, and we'll get into the other stuff, but I'm always curious about when you talk to former quarterbacks, do you see little issues or crutches or things that you had as a player, and you see them in other people, and you're like, man, I kind of get an out of body experience of just my coaches must just been so frustrated watching this because that was me.
Absolutely. And what's even crazier too is the fact that, when you go into coaching and then you kind of look back a little bit at what you were doing as a player too, you're just like, God, what were they coaching me? So it's kind of that give and take where you're like, all right, you're not going to be the bad coaches that you had around you. And you try to do your best to be a different version of what you've learned from the good ones. And then you kind of end up just making as you go and just slowly improving and learning the hard way. So it's pretty fascinating that way.
That's great, dude. I just think of every time I see a noodle arm quarterback who, when you go to these all-star games, right? And you just even you're just doing one-on-ones, and you'll watch how quick they get to their fifth step. I'm getting 3 yards depth. I'm getting my 5 down as fast as I can, so I get this thing up and out before they get away from me. But I always laugh at that stuff.
Well, there's hilarious. No two better guys to talk about quarterbacks in this draft, and to hear the backstory and all that stuff is fantastic, Daniel. I really appreciate giving the extra context there. But to bring it to the relevance of the 2023 draft that we've got coming up, there's 4 guys right now that seem to be in contention for the top 5 right now. It's not Hendon Hooker, Bryce Young. We've got.
Oh, you can say Hendon Hooker. Don't do that, Joe. Yeah, come on, man.
I was going to get to that, but Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, and there's that possibility of Hendon Hooker maybe somewhere in the top 10. in your perspective, from your perspective, DJ, do you think that it's likely we have 4 guys going in the top 5, or could somebody slide out? Could Hendon Hooker slide into the top 10? Are those things possible in the draft?
If I was going to look at it right now, I think we're 2 weeks out today. Mm-hmm. I would say I feel comfortable saying 4 and 7. Like, I think the Raiders being at 7 are very much a quarterback team, even with Jimmy there. I wouldn't, and I've heard, when you talk to different people, it seems like they're a Levis team. Every team kind of has their guy. It seems like they could be a Levis team. So that would give us 4 and 7. I would say we're more likely to see maybe that number slides than to see 5 and 10. If we got 5 and 10, I'll be like, oh, wow. Okay. Now it'll make the draft fun because we'll be, we'll be cranking in terms of the energy level when you get that many quarterbacks going. Mm-hmm. But I do think Hendon Hooker goes in 1, just a matter of where he goes.
Yeah, definitely. And we had a show earlier, our pre-tape before you came on here with us that I actually thought that the Raiders would pass up on a quarterback in this situation just because of McDaniel's history with it really appreciating more of the veteran, leadership, especially too. I go back to the days where he had my brother in Denver, and Kyle Orton, and those guys never really viewed, I feel like, them loving a younger rookie type of quarterback, especially now that he's got the second chance going, as a head coach. Do you really see them maybe possibly pulling the trigger on Will Levis?
Well, I do, just from the standpoint of, hearing about the conversations that existed there, and there just seems to be an interest. And I would just say, look, Levis doesn't have to get out there right away. Jimmy can be that guy. But I also think, as much as I like and respect Jimmy and the results Jimmy gets, Jimmy doesn't play. Like, Jimmy doesn't play a full slate. He's never played a full slate. Yeah. So I don't think you can count on him in terms of being the long-term guy. And I don't know that you can even count on him in this year and run him out there every single week. So, I think it gives him a little something different. I also think there's, doing the Charger games for 5 years now, I think there is a real Mahomes effect on teams inside that division where you're like, at the end of the day, I mean, you look around the AFC and you're like, okay, it's not, is my quarterback good? It's like, is my quarterback good enough to run the gauntlet I'm going to have to run in the AFC? And to get out of this division, like, you have to be able to play at an elite level. You have to be able to play at a high level. Good is not good enough in that division.
For sure. Great point.
Yeah, absolutely. And outside of the quarterbacks, what seems really strange in 2023, we're so used to running backs going early in the history of the NFL. It used to be such a premier position, and that value's shifted. But this year, it seems a little different. Bijan Robinson's a fantastic football player. Some say that he might be the best prospect in the class if we remove that positional value to his name. But for you, Bijan, how early do you think he goes? What do you think is realistic for a player like him?
To me, like, the wild cards are Bijan Robinson and Anthony Richardson, whereas like you have no middle ground. Like, nobody's like lukewarm on either one of these options. Like, you're either pro taking Bijan Robinson or we don't take one in the first round no matter what. Yeah. And then with Anthony Richardson, you're buying the upside or you're buying kind of the floor there, the risk. So he's my third rated player in the whole draft. I still think he goes in the top 15 when it's all said and done. And part of it is because I think he's a great talent. And you got to almost look at him as not just a running back, but like an offensive weapon. Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, if I'm running backs, I'm rebranding, dude. Like, just rebrand it. Don't call it running backs anymore. Totally rebrand the whole thing.
Totally. I agree. No more of like, oh, yeah, I'm a 3-down back kind of guy. Just say, no, you're a running back that actually is a great receiver that occasionally can run the ball for your team. That's what you got to say.
I'm a receiver who lines up in the backfield some and splits out some, and every now and then they hand me the ball. I basically want to be Deebo Samuel, and then just, you can let me dabble. I don't want to major in running the football, minor in that.
I'd throw in there someone like Deuce Vaughn. Kind of fits being able to do that because he's a gadget player. He's tiny. They put him in the slot at Kansas State. They moved him all over the place. But like, he's the first person who comes to mind who you can almost make that argument for offensive weapon, because that's what he was at Kansas State.
Yeah. Well, if I had any advice to running backs too, it's like there were times when you'd ask guys to work out at different positions and they took it as an insult. Like, I would be begging people like, hey, would you like to see me play receiver? Anybody want to see me run some routes out here? Yeah, but so in terms of where he goes, I couldn't pinpoint the team. I can make the case that I think Philly makes the most sense from my perspective, but then having worked in that scouting department, I know they flat out don't believe in taking running backs. Yeah. So I don't think that they will do it, but to kind of put a bow on the whole, do you take a running back? Do you not take one? I just feel like I don't. If you look at a running back as having 5 years, maybe 6 years of their prime, and it starts as soon as they enter the league, I don't want to waste any of those carries. So if you're a bad, most teams picking the top 10 are bad teams. So I'm going to use 3 of his 6 years on his shelf life, and I'm going to just waste these carries in meaningless games where we're not a winning football team.
Right.
Whereas in the way it happened with the Eagles with this trade, they end up with the 10th pick. This is a Super Bowl team. If he only played, let's say he only played the one contract, 5 years, every single carry over those 5 years is meaningful. Like they all matter,
huge
and they're
value.
all difference-making carries. So I can make that case, and I would love to see him do it. But just I'm telling you, man, like off the ball linebackers and running backs, okay, we'll talk about those guys. We're gonna go over the first round guys now. We'll get to those positions later. That's just how they think.
Well, with the 2 picks in the first round, I do see the Eagles maybe being a team that slips in on that second first-round pick that they have. And if he's still there, maybe taking a chance with him saying, hey, we're going to double dip in the first round. We're going to get the best player available for us, and that's Bijan Robinson, especially if they land somebody like Skoronski there early. That's has been my pick for the Eagles with that first pick. And not saying that I'm doing any mock drafts like you, man. So I'm nowhere near your level.
By the way, I could literally my boys, one's a freshman at Baylor, one's a freshman at high school, and I could have them fill out a mock draft the night before the draft, and I'm telling you, they would have just as good a chance to hit as many right as that.
No doubt.
It's a futile exercise. One trade happens, and you're just like, well, so much for that. That just ruined the whole thing.
Yeah, it sounds like our brackets for the NCAA tournament.
Did you have any in the Final Four, by the way?
No, I didn't even make one this year. And that's I got a 19-month-year-old at home right now too. So my time, for making brackets is over right now. Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta push the pause button on that one.
No doubt.
I think I was out by like the elite. I don't think I had anybody in the Elite Eight. I'm like, I don't follow a ton of college basketball, but usually you can just grab a couple blue bloods and throw them in there.
Right.
Not this year.
What the heck? What's going on? Yeah, and I felt bad because I live in San Diego, and San Diego State's playing in the championship game. I think I had them losing like the second round.
Unbelievable. Yeah, what a hater.
By the way, speaking of unexpected, though, we mentioned this earlier. I know it's a bit of an open-ended, difficult question to answer because, again, anything can happen in the first round. But if you were to maybe predict, like if you thought something crazy could happen, maybe it's somebody goes in the first round, like a Peyton Turner is the one that I always think of. No one thought he was going to be a first-round pick, and he was. Who do you think, or last year we had, oh my God, I'm completely blanking on Cole Strange, the Patriots pick was also unexpected.
Got some buzz.
If you thought that there was something like that could happen on draft night, what do you think maybe that could be?
Well, I could give you a couple names here. The big receivers are hard to find in this draft. Most of them are 170, 180 pounds. They're smaller guys. Mm-hmm. Good players, but just not prototypical guys. So if you look at who some of these bigger receivers are, put Quentin Johnson to the side. To me, Cedric Tillman from Tennessee, who's 215 plus pounds, a really good complete receiver, and then Mingo from Ole Miss. Both those guys are big, physical. They play fast. I know Mingo ran the 4.4s. I think Tillman was mid 4.5s, but plays faster than that. I just think the draft is not great at that position. And those guys stand out because everybody else is just so dang small. So you get yourself a big receiver option if you're a team looking for one late in round one.
Yeah, great point. And what is, in your opinion, you got your top 10, you got your mock drafts, all that, but who would be, if you were a GM in this draft, is your dark horse pick where you're like, man, if this guy comes around when we're picking, we're taking him. Who's your, dark horse pick that you got your eyes on?
Well, I mean, I think he's got a chance to go really high, but when I put out my first list in January, he wasn't really in that mix. But Witherspoon, the corner from Illinois, is just he's an animal, man. And it just there's something about the qualities that he possessed reminded me of when I was with the Ravens. Like that's the kind of guy that we like. That's the kind of guy that we wanted to bring in the building, who's just ultra competitive, feisty. He plays with no pause button on the controller, man. Like it is just he sees it, he trusts it, he goes. Yeah. So those qualities to him, I think he's going to be an outstanding player. And I know early on in the process, it was like, oh, he's 180 pounds and maybe he'll go. I'm like, dude, he's, to me, grade wise, when I evaluate him, I thought he's a better player than Denzel Ward. He might not be quite as fast as he was, but Denzel Ward went in the top 5. And lo and behold, as we get towards the draft, it's like, oh yeah, he's a lock. He'll go in the top 10.
Yeah. Well, I think what happens is for him, and you watch his film, you slowly just start to move away from whatever the measurables say, and you start to just see his reaction to the football, his toughness, his grittiness. I mean, it's just there's something about him on the football field. You're absolutely right, that just pours out of a confidence that you see like a Jalen Ramsey or a young Marcus Peters having on the field, right? That has that attitude to be like, I'm going to lock this guy down. And the amount of plays that he makes on the field, especially to the field, and the wide side of the field in college, I just was astounded by that.
Yeah, he's like a little bit. To me, he reminded me the vibe I got when I watched Sauce going into last year's draft. I'm like, the guy looks like he's playing with so much energy and enthusiasm to go along with all the playmaking that you see and just the confidence. I love that in corners. I haven't been around many quiet corners that were great players. So these guys, they're a little different. I guess I don't know if Aeneas Williams, maybe you go back in the Wayback Machine, you can find a couple, but most of those guys are pretty energetic, pretty enthusiastic out there.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. Well, that's all we got for you today, DJ. Really appreciate you taking the time. I know you got to get running with everything you got going on, getting ready for the draft. This was the First Team on Stadium. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more.